excited to bring to you another inspiring standout episode. This is a collaborative broadcast that brought to you by the ABA International Law Section and the Switch. And this series, David and I will interview an international legal leaders out of the amazing community of the American Bar Association International Law Section members and share new insights, ideas, stories, and strategies to inspire and help you grow your practice, your professional practice, or in your career. So you're invited. If you're listening to us, if you're watching us, we are live. So hi, David. How you been?
Well,
What is new?
hello, Itzik. Oh, it's hard to believe that it's fall already. Fall began this week, and yeah, the weather already seems to be changing in New York. I don't know about where you are, but it's a new. There's a freshness in the air that makes me excited about a new year of doing these interviews together with you, and so. There's a lot of newness that I'm feeling at the moment.
Great. I mean, I practice this song everywhere you go. You take your weather with you. So that's what I try to do. So take the sun everywhere I go. So thanks, David. Our episode is titled is very interesting today. Again, beyond joy, growth outside of our comfort zone. Let me put the title for everybody who's joining right now. So this is the title of today. Many people ask, "What is it about? What are you guys talking about?" So first, if you're joining us, please feel free to let us know who you are, where you dining from, where you joining from. We would like to know. Our guests would like to know. We would like to make sure everybody is here with the room, happy, and have questions for our guests. But here's a fact: life is full of opportunities to step outside of your comfort zone. You all know that, but grabbing hold of them can be difficult because sometimes the problem is not being aware of the reason to do so. After all, if the feeling of comfort signifies our most basic needs are being met, why should we seek to abandon it, right? What do you
Oh,
think, David? What is your thought about it?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, 100%. One of the great stories in my background is, when I was stepping away from being a partner at Wachtell, and my wife asked me sort of like, "What's the plan?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's the plan? I'm going to play golf. I'll take some interesting classes, but I'll stay within my comfort zone," is really what I was saying. And my wife was like, "No, absolutely not. Life is about being outside of our comfort zone," and she was absolutely right then. And our guest today is going to be able to share some insights into that. So I'm looking forward to hearing those details.
Absolutely. And actually, everything we was before and out of comfort zone become our comfort zone, the new comfort zone. We always have to go out of it. So you're right, David. But let me share with all of you a secret. What holds people back really most of the time is the frame of mind rather than any distinct lack of knowledge. In fact, when we live in the comfort zone, fear can be a necessary step and really a route to the learning and the growth zone. And if you don't understand that, you will never grow, you will never learn. It takes really courage to step from the comfort zone into this what we call the fear zone. And without a clear roadmap, there's no way to build on previous experience each one of us has. But yet, if you preserve long enough, you will enter what we call the learning zone, where you gain new skills and deal with challenges resourcefully. After a learning period, a new comfort zone is created, as we said, expanding your ability to really reach even greater heights. And this is what it means to be in the growth zone. So you see, that's the growth you want to go. That's the place you want to be. And this is the reason we have the honor to have this episode with Advocate Samantha Rowe. And I think we will like to call it Sam soon, hopefully. So you could gain new insight on how you could intentionally go out of your comfort zone and accelerate the growth of your career or your practice with joy. But before we invite Samantha, as you know, we always do, David, agree with me. With join us, we would like to tell you a bit highlights about Samantha behind her back. Uh, just because you don't want to embarrass people, we just don't hate to hear, right, David? We don't like to hear about ourselves and how old we become
100%.
when people read our resume. So Samantha J. Rowe is a partner of 𝑡𝘩𝑚 and Philipson and international dispute resolution and business integrity groups. Samantha has been named to the Lawyers Hot 100 list, which recognizes the profession's most innovative and inspirational lawyer. She was also named as a rising star with the international arbitration by Law 360, a UK rising star, sorry, and a rising star in the commercial arbitration practice category at the inaugural Euromoney Legal Media, sorry, Group Europe Rising Stars Award. Samantha is also has previously served as the Rule of Law Vice Chair and the Steering Committee member of the American Bar Association Arbitration Committee on the IBA Task Force on the review of the 2010 arbitration rules on the taking of evidence, and much more. So I know we're going to hear more from her in this entitled episode. But without further ado, we would like to invite Samantha to join us and show her face. And here she is. Hey, Samantha. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Itzik. Hi, David. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me today.
Oh, it's so great to have you with us, Sam.
Really
Thanks
great
for joining us for your valuable time, Sam. So let's dive directly to our conversation. I think, David, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So, Samantha, Itzik highlighted the title, Beyond Joy, Growth Outside Our Comfort Zone. Can you tell us a little bit about how your growth as an attorney and as a person has really come from stepping outside your comfort zone?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I really see those two things as going hand in hand, right, David? Like you don't grow as an attorney unless you're growing as a person. Perhaps not vice versa. I think people can probably grow as people without being lawyers. But when I sort of look back over my career, I would say that 4 moments really stand out for me in terms of pushing myself and feeling really sort of quite uncomfortable and a little bit sort of fearful about trying something new and something potentially quite difficult. So the first was when I was 18 and I accepted a position to do my undergraduate degree at the University of Oxford here in the UK. I grew up in a very, I would call it the sort of Midwest of the UK, right? Like I grew up in a sort of small city, very suburban, not very much happened, like a pretty good place to grow up as a kid, but not necessarily the sort of the center of the universe, let's say. I went to a state school, to what you would call public school in the US. And not many people from my school went to Oxford or Cambridge. Like we knew that it existed. Maybe a couple of like science bods went the sort of year or so before me. But it wasn't something that we really thought was a kind of realistic aspiration, I would say. And I was very lucky to a sort of confluence of circumstances within the school. It came to the head of my year's attention that, maybe I should be applying, and he encouraged me to do it. And by encouraging, I mean, he just said, why don't you do it? So I said, sure. Okay. So I applied, I went for interview, I got an offer and I accepted. And, that period between accepting and actually moving down to Oxford, you have a lot of conversations with people at home. And, everyone was sort of saying, it wouldn't be for me. Like, I don't think I'd like it down there. Not for me. And you start to sort of, imbibe a little bit of that, right? And it adds to the sort of fear and the, how's it going to be? And that didn't immediately dissipate when I moved down there. I mean, one of the first courses that you do when you start at Oxford is that Roman law. So you are literally studying legal texts from Roman times. And this was completely different from anything that I had ever done before. It wasn't in Latin, thank goodness. It was in English, but still it was like, whoa, what is this? And I remember the first tutorial, I just walked out and I was like, they have made such a huge mistake. I am not smart enough to be here. I cannot do this. But I persevered. And 4 years later, it was really one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And I would say really an experience that opened all the other doors that followed, or that led to the doors that followed. So then second, after Oxford, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I hadn't done the usual things that students at UK universities do to get a job. And I was at a bit of a loose end, and I was doing an internship down in London. and a couple of people there. It was at the British Institute of International and Comparative Law, which is a sort of think tank focused on international law. A couple of people suggested to go out to the US and to do a master's course. And they said, you know, not so much necessarily for the substance of what you're going to learn, but for the network, for the career opportunities, just for sort of broadening your horizons. This is probably the best thing that you can do. I didn't have any better ideas, so I was like, sure, okay. So, you know, again, applied to a handful of US law schools, and ultimately ended up at NYU. And I'd never been to the United States before. I didn't know. I knew like maybe one person in the US. Like, yeah, I knew like literally like an old family friend who lived in Maryland who I hadn't seen in decades. And yeah, I have to say, taking that flight out to New York was pretty terrifying. The taxi driver like didn't understand my English accent when I landed and took me to completely the wrong place. And got to the dorms, got to Mercer Street, and you know, there were like no lights in the bedroom, and the AC had been on for what felt like the entire summer, and there was just like nothing there. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, this is terrible. I've made such a huge mistake. And again, you know, you wake up the next day, you persevere, you move on. And NYU again was just a bit of a kind of turbocharger, right, for like my life and my career as well. Made so many friends, and it's what ultimately led to me staying in New York for the next decade and working at 𝑡𝘩𝑎𝘵 out of their New York office. So then 10 years later, I'm a senior associate at 𝑡𝘩𝑚. I'm in New York. I'd always sort of had at the back of my mind that at some point I would probably go home to the UK, but it wasn't pressing. And I was just sort of kind of waiting to see what would happen. And a number of things happened within 𝑡𝘩𝑚 around that time. And I was asked by the head of my group, David Rivkin, if I would move to London to basically become kind of one of the senior lawyers here in the London office. And it was a big decision at the time for several reasons, actually, not least because I had just a few weeks earlier met my now husband, who obviously it was like very early days, but you know, when you meet somebody, you kind of know. So it wasn't the best timing. And a very wise friend of mine who I met at NYU once told me that you can live outside your home country, your home jurisdiction for 5 years and go back and it's fine. But if you stay out any longer, it becomes a new country. It's not moving home. It's like moving to a new place. So I sort of had that in the back of my mind as well. But again, it was exciting. The idea of being home, being close to my family again, trying something new. Honestly, at that point, after 10 years of working in the same office with the same people who I adore and love dearly, it still felt like maybe it was time to go try something new, take on a new challenge. So that was number 3, was moving to London at a relatively senior point in my career. And I think I'd underestimated the challenge there because, you know, I built a network in New York and I built capital with the people that I was working with in New York. And this wasn't completely starting again. It was the same law firm, but outside of the law firm, like nobody had any idea who I was. So it was a big piece of work to like get known, to get myself back to sort of where I got to in New York. And then the final one, number 4, is very personal, but it was the birth of my first daughter. Talk about being outside of my comfort zone. Oh my goodness me. Like that was crazy. That was crazy. And you know, I would often find myself trying to get back into my comfort zone by checking my work email, because I'd be like, here's the space where I know what I'm doing and I'm competent and capable, and you know, people trust me. And I was like, it was absolutely wild. But again, and actually maybe that is kind of more from the personal perspective, the growth coming out of that experience was just enormous.
Wow. Awesome. I just have a quick follow-up. Can you share a little bit about who encouraged you during each of these steps? You don't have to go through each of the 4, but like what gave you strength in those moments? Oh,
it's a very good question. And I don't know if strength is the right word, although actually I suppose it is. Like, honestly, a lot of it I think came from somewhere within myself, and it was a bit of a sort of not looking before I leapt situation, like just trying to not think too much about it, just
Jumping
keep
into the deep end.
totally, or just putting one foot in front of the other, right? Like not looking necessarily all the way down the path, but just like looking where I was going at kind of that specific moment. But at the same time, I think having one or two people just have the confidence in you to suggest that you can do something is actually really, really meaningful. So for me, I'll take Oxford as an example. It was just my history teacher. I loved history. I loved him. And he was the one who suggested to my head of year that I should do Oxbridge. And that, was meaningful and kind of set the whole train of events going.
Awesome.
Thanks very much, Sam, for sharing with us your inspiring stories. I mean, you can see everybody's laughing there listening to you and your contagious laugh. But actually, it reminded me a good quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, who said once, "Do one thing every day that scares you."
That's huge.
And I think one important lesson I learned in stepping out of my comfort zone is that taking risk can lead to really the unexpected and really the rewarding outcome. Because every story like yours, you could see that, but we don't take the risk. Yes. And I used to be, very risk averse. I assume like many of you, and prefer to stick to familiar routine and environment. However, I think like we hear from Sam, when you decided to take a chance and pursue something outside of your comfort zone, I ended up discovering a new passion, a career path that I would never have considered before. And it's exactly what Sam tells us in her stories. It taught me that sometimes the greatest opportunities and experiences can come from taking a leap of faith and trying something new. But let's continue our conversation, because I love it, because I think everybody identified himself with you, what you hear and what you said, that strength come within you when David asked the question. And if you, many times fears come when we think too much about things, don't take the action. That's where the fears comes in to protect us. So, and as we shared several times in your short introduction, your practice focuses on international arbitration and public international law. So how did you come to this area of law, and what is the story behind that, if you allow us to ask you?
Yeah, really. Yeah, good question. It all started, I think, with the international before the law sort of joined the end of that sentence. Yeah. So I always had a passion. As I said earlier, like I grew up in a very normal, very boring city in the middle of the UK. We didn't have an enormous amount of money, so we didn't travel. We went on a few kind of big trips. We had family in Australia, a couple of times to France, but we weren't one of these families that was sort of going all over the world. But from somewhere, really like this passion, this idea that I wanted a life that was full of kind of travel and different places and different cultures and different languages. And the languages is a weird one, because we're not, as you probably know, in the UK, as in many English speaking countries, we're not great at teaching or learning languages. And we very randomly in our house had this like French book. It was like a sort of French instruction book. I couldn't tell you where it came from, but I was obsessed with it. Like I used to go upstairs and spend hours poring over this book and teaching myself how to speak French. And I picked that up, and that was part of my degree at university as well. So I knew from a very young age that whatever it was that I ended up doing, I really wanted it to be global. And then the law piece was a bit of almost the sort of opposite of that. I mean, I picked law because it seemed like a very safe subject to do. I knew I wanted to leave my home city. I wanted to go and work in London, or I wanted to go and work in kind of one of the big kind of world cities. And law seemed like a good way to do that, to like have financial security and all of those good things. So I went to Oxford, I did law. I actually did really enjoy it as a subject. It's taught in a very, as the Roman law example, may have indicated, it's taught in a very academic, theoretical, philosophical way at Oxford, which is very, for me, was fascinating. But it wasn't until I studied public international law right at the end of my 4 years that I found a subject that I felt passionate about. And it was taught by Sir Franklin. I was taught by Sir Franklin Berman, who was the legal advisor to the Foreign Office. And he would just, come into our tutorials and tell us stories about negotiating human rights treaties with the Saudis, and he negotiated like the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like this is exactly the sort of thing that I want to do with my life. So that was where the international law came from. And then that took me to the internship in London, onto NYU. Loved studying international law at NYU. Such a great faculty, such a great program of courses there as well. But I still didn't really know what to do with it. This is a bit of a theme, frankly. And I went to a career event that was hosted at the New York City bar. So it was in the winter, that much I remember. And it was a sort of international legal careers panel. And I was like, this is great. This is what I need. I need some guidance as to what to do. And 𝐸𝘭𝑒𝘷𝑒𝘭𝑡, who's now at the bar in London, was one of the speakers. And I sort of cornered him afterwards. And I said, look, I love international law, but after 4 years at Oxford and a year at NYU, I absolutely need to earn some money. So like, what should I do? And his excellent suggestion was, well, look, international arbitration combines public international law with a commercial law practice. So go and find yourself a law firm that does international arbitration. And I was like, great, I will do that. So I went home that night. I started pouring through chambers, firing off emails with my CV to various law firms around New York City. And I think I got 3 responses. I must have sent hundreds of emails. I got 3 responses, one of which was like, thanks, but no thanks. One of which arrived like 6 months later, by which point I sort of sorted myself out. And one of them was from Donald Donovan, who's a partner at Debevoise and Plimpton, saying, I've sent this on to recruitment and we'll be, inviting you in for an interview. Did the interview, got the job, and thank goodness, because to this day, it's the only interview and job offer I've ever really had.
I can see many people behind the scenes now say, damn it, we just didn't answer Sam the email.
Yeah.
Now that you see what you lose after a while. So that's amazing, Samantha. Thank you very much. It's exactly great example of taking the leap and listening to advice of smart people. Again, those who are joining us, please let us know who you are, where you're dialing from. We would like to know, our guests like to know that we are not alone. We can see you behind the scenes, but we would like to see everybody else. Again, it's a good opportunity for personal brand. And feel free to type your questions again in the box under the video for Samantha, because we would love to ask your question to Samantha. Otherwise, she will answer you that after, when you watch the replay. We're here again with Samantha Rowe talking about Beyond Joy, growth outside of your comfort zone. If you're joining us, we're live. And back to you, David.
Thanks so much. It's really a tremendous lesson in determination that, for all of those out there that are listening, about what it takes to get a job, and the fact that you only need that one interview. You need the right one. It's got to be the right one, but that's all you really need. And that just is such an important lesson that highlights how determination can get you where you're looking to go. So, Sam, I'd like to go back to your childhood for a moment. And, can you tell me, you touched on this book that you had at home about the language, French language, but where did that come from, that love of travel and languages?
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a good question, because it certainly didn't come from what was known. So I think it must have come from some sort of inherent yearning for the unknown, right? Like, I knew growing up that I wanted to do something different, that I wanted something more, as I said, I think at the beginning, I had such a great upbringing for a kid. Like, it was safe, it was routine, it was like going down to the park at the end of the road without any adults, because like nothing ever happened there, so they didn't have anything to worry about. So it was fantastic from that point of view, but I really always sort of knew that wasn't going to be where I ended up. So I was kind of like Belle in Beauty and the Beast, sort of walking around Derby with my book and this provincial life like playing in the background. That was me.
Yeah, there must be something more.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right.
And,
Thanks
and
for
I think
sharing.
it
Go ahead, Dave.
highlights, it really highlights how, that feeling of that there must be something more can be a tremendous driver, because on some level, I think you successfully leaned into that with each of the decisions to go outside your comfort zone. And so, I encourage, each of us to sort of think about how we want something more out of whatever it is in life, and that if we're worried about going outside of our comfort zone, that we can hold on to that, wanting of something more in order to help us get over the fear factor of trying to try something new. Anyway, it's back to you for the final question.
Yeah, so again, those of you who are joining us still, we have this Samantha Rowe speaking on Beyond Joy, growth outside of your comfort zone. And you absolutely welcome to ask your question to Samantha before we'll end up our conversation. Again, we thank you for all of you joining us right now. We are really happy, and I'm sure also Samantha want to thank you for your attention. We came again to the attention, so let's talk about the attention switch moment. A good opportunity to give attention to the people who deserve it within the ABA International Section Global Community. And as always, we also ask Samantha, who are the 2 or 3 people you want to thank within the ABA International Law Section community, and why? And Samantha, the floor is yours to do that.
Yeah, of course. Well, listen, when you're at 𝑡𝘩𝑒𝘭𝑔, there are a lot of kind of luminaries that when you go out into the world and out to conferences, people like, oh, do you work with David Rivkin? Do you work with Donald Donovan? Within the ABA, it's always, well, do you know Deborah Enox-Ross, right? Like it's, and so Deborah, when I joined 𝑡𝘩𝑒𝘭𝑔, was the practice manager for our group. So just like kind of making sure we were all doing exactly what it was that we were supposed to do at all moments in time. She's now a senior advisor and really like helps us on the kind of client relationship profile building front, and just does amazing work with us. But talk about a life that kind of, and it coming from the perspective of what we call a 𝑡𝘩𝑒𝘭𝑔 lifer, like I look at the career that Deborah has had, which has taken her all over the world, like all of these different things that she's done, from this like little girl growing up in the Bronx to where she is today. Like she just is so inspiring and so warm and so lovely. We had offices next to each other for a big chunk of time in New York, so we got to know each other very well because we had that geographical proximity. And she's just wonderful. So absolutely massive thanks to Deborah. And then I would be very remiss if I didn't mention my 2 other conference co-chairs, Barbara Linney and Alistair Brown, and 𝑒𝘭𝑒𝘢𝑚, of course. We are currently in the process of organising the fall conference, which will be in London, in my hometown, this year in November. It's been such a joy to work with them on this. We've put together what I think is actually an amazing programme. The substantive stuff is great. We've got some ex-judges from the UK, we've got ex-judges from the US, we've got some big names that are going to be speaking, but there's also an amazing program of events going on around it as well. So we start with evensong in one of the temple churches, which is just going to be beautiful. We have dinner in one of the temples on the Thursday. We have a reception at Winfield House, which is the US ambassador's private residence in London.
Cool.
Yeah, which I had to petition the +1s because my husband is American and he has been dying to go to Winfield House, and I've finally got him in. So I've got, some really good brownie points there as well. And then a trip to Runnymede on the Saturday for those who want to do that too. So it's just going to be a fabulous conference, a fabulous opportunity to experience some really cool stuff in London, including things that you don't usually get to do. So I would encourage everybody to sign up and to join us. We'd be delighted to host you here.
And the point is that if you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable going, then everything that you've heard from Sam highlights that you really should be the one to go, because you will grow as a result. You'll grow just from having taken that step. And then the beauty of the international law section is the family nature of the community that you'll find. So don't miss this opportunity to step outside your comfort zone.
And thanks, Samantha, because I just promised 2 days ago to Deborah that I will mention her online, and you did it for me. So thank you for helping make it happen. I didn't know it was going to happen. He said, "How will you make it happen?" I said, "I don't know. The universe would help me." That was my answer to Deborah. Here you go. So you just helped me fulfill what I promised. So thanks for that. I don't know if anybody has any questions to Samantha. Now it's the time to ask it, because we're almost at the end. We're almost saying goodbye to Samantha. But all of you there, you hear it all the time. We heard all the time in our background, whatever. Step out of your comfort zone. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Nothing grows in your comfort zone, right? So, but is that true? Can getting uncomfortable and enduring the stress that come with it really help you grow as a professional, move you toward your achieving your goals, or push you forward the next stage of your career? That's probably what you're asking. That's what you should ask. We believe, David and me, that this session help us unpack what getting outside of your comfort zone means and how it could be a new tool for achieving the life you desire with joy, not just for nothing. And Samantha, our guest, is a true example for it. For now, Samantha, where did you go? You left us. Let me bring you back. Where have you been? Samantha, here you are. You left us for a second. I hope you heard what we said. But we want to thank you, Samantha, for being great honor to having you here. We don't see any question coming, but I guess if they come after, with people watch the replay, we'll make sure you get it. But thank you very, very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a delight talking to you, Itzik and David. And yeah, really, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great to have you. Looking forward.
And don't leave us to the thing, because we're going to stay still. So thanks, Samantha. But David and myself want to talk still behind Samantha back. And David, what is your reflection of today's session?
Oh, wow. I mean, what I loved about today's session is the clear sense of joy that Samantha brought to each of the challenges that she faced. And it's clear how looking back, how much appreciation of those challenges, how she feels great about having overcome the challenges, and how much joy was in the entire experience. And to me, this really highlights an aspect of how we can match that. Actually, if we become our best selves, at whether it's best selves as a lawyer or whatever our profession, if we become our best selves, that in and of itself, that effort will bring tremendous joy to our lives. And that to me is what the beauty of what I saw in Samantha's answers.
I mean, it's remind me, David. I remember that was one of your keywords, was when you were the chair of the international section, was joy.
Yep,
And actually,
absolutely.
I think we all, not just today in the session, I think not that we heard it, we experienced it, we felt it. Every laugh that Samantha gave us, we felt the joy. It was not just a laugh for the sake of laugh. It is laugh of her decision, how brave she was. And she almost laughing at herself that, look where I am now, what did I do then? And how joyful I'm in the moment because I took those decisions. So I think today's session, Samantha, reminds us all that recognizing opportunities to leave the comfort zone isn't always easy. Neither is seizing them with conviction. But it's crucial to cultivate a mindset that lays, if I could say, strong foundation, really paving the way toward the growth zone, as we talked before. That includes really seeing yourself as inherently adaptable, reframing stress, and believing that your ability to endure fears and doubt. And every professional, including us, really faces this choice, knowingly or not. And you could settle for what you know, the seemingly safe, the familiar, the routine, or you could become receptive to opportunities for growth, for challenging your personal status quo, and really seeing what you're capable of. And this is called living, by the way. And it's your choice and only your choice if you want to do it or not. And look at the difference between people who talk to us like Samantha, who did it, or people who didn't do it, maybe not even come to our show because they didn't go out of the comfort zone. And when it comes a habit, the benefits to be reaped throughout life are copious. Not only are disappointment curbed and regrets avoided, but also reach out highest human potential, acting as inspiration to others. Exactly like Samantha was saying. So today, now my friends, take the action, implement every single thing you heard from Samantha. And I suggest come to London, come to the conference, look for Samantha, tell her you watch the show, and ask her the question you want to ask her and learn. See it by yourself. See the joy she talks about. We've been here with Samantha Rowe. She's a top international dispute resolution lawyer and a wonderful member support of the American Bar Association International Law Section. And you know what I do always the last. I want to thank you, David,
Oh,
for
you're so
another
kind.
joyful episode. I
I
always
have just
learn with
one.
you before you. Thank you very
I have
much.
just I have just one last point that I want to make, and that
Sure.
is that Samantha also highlighted the way that people encouraged her. And even especially for those of you who recognize the truth in everything that she said, be like Itzik and let people know what they're capable of, and encourage people like Samantha was encouraged, because not only will you be helping the person, but you'll enable them to have the strength to overcome their challenges. So please be the encouraging person, the people that we heard about from Samantha today. So it's back to you to close us out. But I just had to make that last
Sure.
additional point.
Always wise word, David. Thank you for that. David and myself want to thank each one of you that joining us, staying us till the end. Thank you very, very much for that. And hopefully, again, if you have questions, put it back under the chat when we give it to Samantha. Until the next time, we'll see everyone in the next standout episode. And from us, from here, bye for now.
Bye.
Everybody.